Welcome to the Fantasy Clown off-season show team breakdown. What I'm doing is going through each and every one of my dynasty teams over the next couple weeks, which will turn into months, and just kind of breaking down a state of the team and where they are, and just kind of an exercise for me to really take a deep dive into each team, where they stand today, and maybe where they've been and where I hope to take them to in the future. Also breaking down the leagues, which is really kind of a good exercise for me to get a good grasp of where the team is and how I'm doing as I look at this habit, if you will, of 61 dynasty teams and just kind of where each one of those teams stand. So today, going to take a look at the Hop team, and I'm kind of doing these in order, start to finish, of how long I've had the team and kind of where I've seen it go. And so this team actually is the team in its 25th year. So, we've had a quarter of a century with this team, and it's gone through a lot of different life changes for me. I mean, raising kids and not spending very much time with the team, to years I didn't watch any football, and then maybe years where I just watched football on Thanksgiving, and remember some of those years where my boys were having ASO soccer on Sunday afternoon, so I didn't watch any football, and throughout the course of time, but really got more committed to things once both of my boys stopped playing college baseball, and my time seemed to be a lot more available in the fall of the year, and really won this league in 2018 and 2019. And I hadn't won in the whole decade of the 2000 teens. I hadn't won since the early 2000s, a couple times as well. And I think I've won 5 times over the course of my 25 years. So not a bad percentage, if you will. But as I really increased my amount of dynasty teams over the last couple of years, 2020, 2021, and 2022, this team hasn't gotten there. And I was really reflecting upon the team itself. And, I finished with a 6th place finish, a 7th place finish, and then an additional 7th place finish. So, this team, looking at just this past year, went 8-6 and finished outside of the playoffs in 7th place. So, did have 8 wins and was finished over 500, but wasn't good enough to get to the playoffs in a 12-team league. So, just a little bit short. This league doesn't do a lot of trading. It's a former Yahoo team and moved over to Sleeper. Thankful for this group of guys, and I don't really know very many of them, but the longtime commissioner out in Seattle, Washington, which is across the coast for me, across the country for me. He was willing to move over this league to Sleeper in 2021 so that all my teams could be on the same platform. Makes it a little bit easier for me, but not good enough for me to get a win. This team doesn't do a lot of trading, so I've found that I might average a trade a year in here, and that might be one of about 5 if I looked at the overall. I think the league averages about 5 trades per year. I'm pretty active with the waivers, and this is a unique setup where it doesn't have fab bidding. It's a waiver priority sort of thing, and so here you really want to kind of keep that high waiver priority, but I find that about half the league is really active on waivers and the other half isn't. So you kind of look at where you are in that half of the league that's active on waivers, and it's because it's a non-PPR league and 3 points for a touchdown for quarterbacks, it really devalues the quarterback. Or if you have a cheat code quarterback or a running quarterback, and I have Lamar, it really bodes well. However, I picked up Daniel Jones off the waiver wire for the bye week this year when Lamar had his bye, and I think when he was injured for a brief period earlier in the year. And so, there's always quarterbacks to be had on the waiver wire. Now, some of the teams do carry more than my one. I really only carry one quarterback and kind of have done that for the last several years. I did have Jordan Love for a while on my taxi, but these taxi squads have unique rules where if you activate the player, you can't ever put them back on taxi, no matter if the app allows you to. So, you're kind of, stuck with, you can leave them on taxi as long as you want, but you can't activate them. So, that's kind of how this goes. So I did drop him in order to keep my running backs at a higher level on the taxi squad. So kind of use that my taxi for running backs, and in this case, I do have some receivers on there as well to just to kind of balance things out. I have a heavy running back build on this roster, and I do cycle through some of the handcuff running backs, if you will. And because it's a single tight end league, I really try to only hold one tight end. I do have Jelani Woods, and you'll kind of hear about that as my second tight end, just because I wasn't sure what's going to happen in the coaching staff, and he's so big and young that I kind of thought, just using a roster spot over the course of the winter, because this league doesn't allow you to do any roster pickups until August. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of had maybe some of those players that may get drafted. We have a 1-round veteran draft right before the season starts, so after all the roster cut downs. And so I kind of wanted to have people that I thought might be big parts of the offense. And at that point, that was before George Kittle really took off, and I thought, well, it might be good to use a roster spot on a guy like Woods, who might be an up-and-coming tight end. It could also be a place where I just drop it and use that as a place where I can pick up a player in that veteran draft if I have, applicable players or need to make some drops. And I do have my IR spots totally full. This league has 2 IR spots, and I have them full currently. So, I'm in a position where I have Darnell Mooney and Damian Pierce on the IR. So, I want to activate both of those players as they are part of my starting crew most weeks. So now this team, because it's non-PPR, I'm really focused on going with running backs. But one of the flaws, and I guess I'd love to hear some of your opinions, that I see here is while I'm very, very patient, dynasty teams tend to take on shapes that look different than when you originally draft them. And so I feel like maybe I have an abundance of players that on one team, and especially like in San Francisco, I have CMC, Kittle, and then I have Danny Gray, who's on my taxi. But I basically have a running back and a tight end from the same team, and that feels like an awful lot of the San Francisco offense. Even though it's a pretty good offense, it feels like, I only go as San Francisco goes. When San Francisco has their bye week, I have to figure out 2 starters to put in, and to replace those 2 guys without an injury. It creates this kind of situation. And when 8-6 didn't get me to the playoffs, I can't afford to lose too many weeks. I feel like I need to go probably 10-4 to solidify a definite shot at the playoffs, just because the haves and have-nots seem to be pretty great in here. I would have gotten there with a 9-5 record, but it would have come down to points, and it just so happened I did have enough points to get there. So, it's a kind of an interesting league, and I think I've finished over 500 most years, but don't always get to the playoffs and lose kind of out on some of the way the tiebreakers come around, if you will. So I can always point to one player or one bad decision I made to keep me from the playoffs. So that's kind of something that I've been really focused on of late in that respect. No flexes here, and it's obviously non-PPR. Another kind of dilemma I have with the same team is Baltimore. I have Lamar Jackson and I have DK Dobbins. And, it feels a little bit, again, with a quarterback and a running back as kind of a little bit heavy. Now, I don't necessarily need to start Dobbins, and I obviously this year I didn't use him at all, but he's just kind of there, and I got him in a trade for almost free when I was acquiring some first-round picks and that sort of thing when he was hurt. So he was the guy I had stashed last year on my IR, and that was really the purpose of him, to come back when he returns. Now, from KC, I have 3 players, and so really probably looking to move on from those. I have Juju, McKinnon, who maybe has a change of scenery or retires, and then Tony. So might look to move some combination thereof, and maybe they won't all be back, so maybe that dilemma will have, shake itself out. And then in Buffalo, I have Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakir. So I have 2 receivers from Buffalo. Not sure exactly what I'm going to do there. Shakir is on the taxi squad, so don't have to make a real decision on him as well. So I have Gray and Shakir there on the taxi squad as well. And then from Indianapolis, I actually have Woods that I spoke about earlier, and then also I have Zach Moss, and picked him up late in the year, just kind of as a hedge against the owner that had uh, Jonathan Taylor, just to kind of make sure that he didn't have his handcuff. And so, not sure what I'm going to do with that. Zach Moss is still young. Try to really keep the running back room full. Because it seems like even though I think I have good running backs, they tend to become nothing. I mean, I have Carter and James Robinson from the Jets, so they're number 2 and number 3 in the running back pecking order there, and I don't have the good one. So I feel like that's and Robinson was a key starter for me 2 years ago on my championship team with CMC. So I felt like I was in really good shape, and then how quickly things just change and go away. So now I'm kind of excited about Pierce and CMC. So CMC being the constant there feels like somebody good. And then with the Rams, I actually have 2 players as well, and I have Tutu Atwell, and that's kind of was a pickup to see what kind of comes about, and just kind of a receiver to have. And then I have Dicker the kicker as my kicker, so I only carry 1 kicker. But the rules here are that you do need to carry one of every position. So I would be tempted to drop the kicker and defense over the course of the offseason and then use those spots on something else, and then pick up those positions late, because I figure I'll take whoever's hot at the moment. But in this league, there is a rule that you must have each player there. So do hold a kicker and a defense over the course of time. And then some of my single position players that I have on just one of the teams, I have Mooney and Pierce. I think I mentioned both of them. And then I have the Giants, Wan'Dale Robinson, in my taxi as well. And then I have Ford from Cleveland, and just kind of waiting to see what they do in the running back room there, to see if Ford is a keeper. And he's basically on my taxi as well. So that's my 4 taxi players. I have Gray, I have Wan'Dale, I have Ford, and I have Khalil Shakir. So 3 receivers, 1 running back. I would really love to get that to 4 running backs if I could ever figure out how to do that. But just don't have enough draft capital in the right spots typically to accomplish that. But just kind of trying to get better every year, in that respect. And then I have Damian Harris, expecting him to be in a different spot. And then my defense this year was the Philadelphia defense, and you'd think that would be pretty good, but just not. It was defense I picked up around week 2 or 3, and then just rode them out for the year, really, and just tried to capitalize on the sack points that they were accomplishing for me. So that's kind of what that team has been, but good enough to finish 7th, so not good enough to get to the playoffs. Did move on from Terry this year as a receiver, and so what that brought me back was the number 12 pick in the draft, or a first round pick, but the guy that won with him. So I guess it wasn't that great of a move on my behalf, but I got Juju and a first back, so I felt like I was getting younger with Juju. I think I got 1 year of age on Juju, and then also got a little younger, so it kind of made sense for me at that point with the first round rookie pick to move on there. And then I think I had to give up my second in the process. So I'm sitting with the number 6 overall, the number 12 overall, and then I wait till the 42nd pick in the draft, or the 4th round, the 6th pick. So I don't have my 2nd or 3rd, but I do have the 6, the 12, the 42. And so as I always do, I try to take the best player available in the draft. And that's kind of what my ammo is each and every year. I don't reach for players. I just rank my players, and then I just take the top ranked guy on my list, and I basically just draft in that kind of thing. Don't look at need. And now I do skew to certain positions a lot of times. Like, I have them ranked differently than maybe you'd see on a list somewhere, but I do follow my list. And so I had the 104 last year. That was a pick I had acquired, and that's where I got Pierce. So that kind of gives you an idea of where you kind of have to pick to get those players, and who you get out of those kind of spots. And then players like Wan'Dale, I was able to get him later in the draft, with I think it was even a 3rd round pick, where it went now. And usually I have to give up. I gave up my 1st round pick earlier in the year last year for the rights to Michael Carter. So that's why the 1st round pick that I actually had was gone last year. So that's kind of how this league goes. I'm thinking at this point I'm going to stay the course. I did win 2 out of the last 5 years. So while I didn't win the last 3 years, and that feels like what have you done lately? And I always look at those kind of things. I have won 2 out of the last 5, so it's a profitable enterprise for me. But I guess I'm looking here and seeing with in a low stakes that I'm still profitable, but I really want to turn the corner. And what I've found in this particular league, it feels like I never have good enough wide receivers and I never have enough running backs. So I've never felt like, oh man, what am I going to do at tight end? There's always a tight end I can pick up. I've never felt like, oh no, what can I do at quarterback? I mean, I won with guys like Blake Bortles and guys like Jameis Winston were my quarterbacks on championship teams before Lamar came around. And so I just don't worry about quarterbacks. And even injuries doesn't matter. I just pick up a guy like Daniel Jones and figure, hey, we're just going to take those points and go. Never seem to really do poorly there. Kittle's been hurt a lot over the course of time, and I've always just picked up a guy. For a minute this year, I ran out there Taysom Hill for a couple of weeks, and he did okay for me in this kind of a format where touchdowns matter. And I had him, and then I dropped him, and somebody else picked him up. Like it's just kind of how it goes. Tutu Atwell has more value to me over the course of the off season and what he might become as part of the Rams offense than what Taysom Hill may or may not be at tight end. Like, so holding a tight end at that level doesn't make as much sense. Now with Jelani Woods, I think he's 6'7", and if a new coach comes in and says, hey, I'm going to cater this around the offense, and that's the guy I'm going to play, and he's going to get starter minutes. And at that point, when Kittle was really injury prone, I feel like I'm going to follow some advice that I heard, and you run the wheels off the tight end. And I don't like making decisions at those onesie positions. So I make all my decisions at receiver, and that's usually where I have to make the decisions. And then at running back, I feel like I just have to start the guys that are there. There was many weeks where I just had to start McKinnon because Pierce is hurt, CMC is hurt. I just had so many people just, injured. And I did drop Samaje Perine throughout the course of the time. But I was starting him for a couple of weeks and had him, especially the week that I played the Mixon owner. That was a lot of fun. Actually, Samaje Perine started, and I got a win that week. So, I got 8 wins, but 8 wins wasn't enough to get me there. There were some, after 25 years, though, you find that there's these really stacked teams and there's really bad teams. My division is 3 divisions in our league, and my division seems to be really rough. All 3 teams ahead of me in my division made the playoffs. And so of the 6 teams that made the playoffs, 3 were my division. And then 2 lower record teams than me made the playoffs in the other 2 divisions. And so, well, I guess one in one other division won with a lower record than me. And then I guess the other 2 came out of another division that had a better record than me. But, I was kind of frustrated by that under 500 team that made the playoffs, and my 8-6 team couldn't make the playoffs just based on divisions. But, that's kind of how it rolls, though, when you start playing these divisional kind of leagues. And so, while it didn't work out well for me this year, maybe some year it will work. And I guess I just rely on the numbers. So interested in hearing what you guys think about this team in the comments. I'm excited for where the team goes in the future, and I'll link a copy of the team in the message board as well, so you guys can take a peek at it, take a peek at the roster, and let me know your thoughts. For today, just wanted to break down the 25-year-old HopW team, and let me know your comments in the chat. So long for now.